Board Control with a commanding victory over Zixo in our first match of round number 2 here at DreamHack Montreal 2018. And we are about to get into our second match of the round. It's going to be Seiko versus Feno. Seiko of Team Genji, Feno of Team Fate to Karma, completing the Fate to Karma trifecta here on stream in the first couple of rounds at the tournament. So far, they're 1-1. Glazer lost to Purple in round number 1. Board Control just took that win over Zixo. Feno, we hear, is up 1-0 over Seiko, his Rogue having taken a win over Seiko's Druid. And we were actually speculating quite a bit about what the bans potentially could be in the little bit of a break before we got back to this. I'm frankly kind of surprised that Seiko did not ban Feno's Quest Rogue.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting. If we look from Seiko's lineup, we can see that he has a Q block, he has a Shutterwalk Shaman, he has an odd Rogue, and he also has a token Druid. So it's kind of 50-50, I would say, with what is favorable. I would actually say that the Druid for Seiko is pretty favorable against Feno's Rogue. It is token Druid versus Rogue, but that matchup's a debated one, right? Especially with the new list, you also have cards like Giggling Inventor, which is pretty hard for that, you know, that Druid to get through. So it's definitely more difficult than it was in the past, but it's kind of interesting to see, you know, he didn't ban it for a reason. Maybe he felt as if, you know, he would have those aggro decks. Maybe he has an odd Rogue for the counter queue. But it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how this matchup pans up now that Feno has won maybe what some people consider an unfavorable or a 50-50 matchup. Yeah,
I would say that one is fairly close, especially if it is the new version of Token Druid, but I actually think that Seiko was playing the Violet Teacher Oaken Summons variant, which can get on the board a little bit faster than the Star Knight Chain Gang version. So tough to say. Either way, we don't know exactly what happened. Feno did win that matchup. So Seiko's Warlock was banned. Feno's Warlock banned as well. Okay, Seiko's Warlock was a cube Warlock. Feno's is even. Try to understand what is the rationale for Feno to ban Seiko's cube Warlock.
So Feno has access to Token Druid and Warrior, and if he's expecting Seiko to ban out, say, his own Warlock, that would mean that Q Block would effectively have at least 2 favorables. And if the Quest Rogue does not slide through somewhere, let's say Feno's worried about sliding the Quest Rogue through, the Q Block could terrorize the entire lineup, terrorize, you know, that odd Warrior. It's very good against that, especially because, you know, it's running the traditional package with Spirit Singer Umbra. It also has Rin the First Disciple, which means that odd Warrior basically has no chance in that matchup. Because if Seiko wanted to, he could just go ahead and hold onto the weapon, play the Rin, kill it off, and then win the game through that means. I think we're getting straight into game number 2. Fenomeno already up 1-0 over Seiko on that Quest Rogue. And Seiko does have his Odd Rogue for that Q. Although, this matchup, I think, has gotten a lot better for the Quest Rogue over time.
Oh, yeah. Giggling Inventor is a hell of a card.
Giggling Inventor is an insane card. The amount of stats that puts onto the board on top of just being so powerful, and you can hide it behind things like Sonya's Shadow Dancer. You can even complete your quest on it. If you get Valir up, you just play infinite Giggling Inventors. It gets absurd.
None will survive.
It's very powerful.
It's no laughing matter, Cora.
I'm not laughing, Jay.
Good. Did giggle.
It still can be. It can be difficult for the Rogue to complete the quest. And if that is the case, then Giggling Inventor, yes, is a good deterrent. It's a good way to stave off some damage, but its best use in this deck is post-quest completion when you get 3 4/4 minions for 5 mana and 2 of them have Divine Shield. Seiko, however, has a phenomenal start here.
It's kind of interesting. You might ask yourself, why did Seiko go for the coin Tar Creeper there? He had a perfect opportunity to go for that coin Vicious Fledgling. And the reason he went for the Tar Creeper is because he wants to protect the Vicious Fledgling to make sure it does connect face. If the Vicious Fledgling connects face, it's almost game over from that point. So going with the Tar Creeper first meant that there was no shenanigans with the South Sea Deckhand. A lot of times what Feno would do is just say, hey, you know what? South Sea Deckhand trade. I don't need this Deckhand for the Charger later on. I would rather not take the damage. But Seiko playing around that by saying, hey, look, if I can protect this from the South Sea Deckhand play, or, you know, potentially, let's say there's a backstab. I don't believe Feno is running the backstab list. He is not, as I can see by the lists. But South Sea Deckhand would have been a very important turn for Feno if he could clear up that Vicious Fledgling. With the Dark Reaper, he can't do that, so now he has to play a little bit awkwardly, and he doesn't even have the South Sea Deckhand. So I'm talking nonsense.
I mean, the version of the deck that Feno is running, you're absolutely right. We're seeing some decks cutting Stone Tusk Boar. We're seeing some decks cutting the Wax Elementals in favor of double Fan of Knives. Pheno has cut 1 Boar, and he's cut 1 Mimic Pod for the double Fan.
I would say that's typically standard at this point. I'd say those cuts are the standard ones. Some players, you know, they cut out the Wax Elementals like you were mentioning in the past, whether they'd rather have the Chargers or not. The one issue with only having access to, say, 1 Stone Tusk Boar is in matchups like Odd Warrior, where you feel you are heavily favored because you have that burst damage, you no longer have that. That means that you have to play a more honest, fair game and try and win through that, and sometimes Odd Warrior can just outvalue them.
Yeah, it definitely is possible. If the Rogue cuts the Boars altogether, Odd Warrior is, I don't want to say favored, it's very, very close if there's no Boars for the Rogue because their damage is so much less. But the reason that you're seeing the Boars coming out is because of the inclusion of Giggling Inventor. This deck can easily go the distance with Valera the Hollow, Giggling Inventor, and Zola the Gorgon. You can just essentially have infinite minions by bouncing your Zolas, utilizing the Death Shadow to get more Zolas. Quest Rogue is a lot more powerful in the late game than it used to be, so you don't necessarily need to win all of your games by charging Boars at face. You certainly still can with just the 1 copy in the deck. I think it's covering all of his bases very correctly here for Pheno.
So Pheno had a decision there, and he could have gone for a Glacial Shard plus Elven Minstrel or the Giggling Inventor. He was kind of weighing out what he felt would be more impactful onto the board, but I would have liked to seen Pheno think a little bit more on that Minstrel play. The reason I say that is, although you are fairly close to completing the quest with this Glacial Shard right now, and it's one of the best ones to complete the quest on, against Odd Rogue, Pheno's going to run into the issue of not having many cards left and relying on Vanish to try and get him back in the game. So if he goes for the 1-mana Glacial Shard and the Elven Minstrel, sure, he shows Seiko a little bit more information, but he draws through his deck more, increases his odds of drawing the Vanish, and can then potentially play the 0-mana Glacial Shard, Vanish, bounce it back, and then play the Giggling Inventor on the future turn to complete the Glacial Shard. But the issue with that is you're relying on drawing Glacial Shard at that, or you're relying on drawing Vanish at that point. And maybe Pheno, you know, he has this idea that, you know, he doesn't need to win through the Vanish this early on in the game. So that's why he went for the Giggling Inventor play over, you know, trying to rely to draw the Vanish.
And apologies for that little bit of an overlay issue. Seiko is not playing a Quest Odd Rogue deck.
That'd be very impressive. You never know. Let me look at the deck list right now. Nope.
Yeah, it's going to be a no. That is not intended to be there. We apologize for that. Wind Fury on that Vicious Fledgling.
That's important.
This is a lot of damage going right to the dome.
Wouldn't be surprised to see maybe Stealth taken. Or +3 health. You know, stickier the minion, the better. But Pheno actually does pick up that Vanish.
That is absolutely necessary here if he doesn't want to die. And as we learned, Dr. J, fun fact, Baku the Moon Eater is a beast. That's not relevant here, but it was very relevant in our last match. Watch out for Katharina and Rogue, my friends.
Yeah, Blink Fox and
actually pretty
Katharina
good.
Into Baku the Moon Eater is a very powerful turn. See Seiko just playing out his whole hand, might as well. You know, it basically forces Pheno to have the Vanish, and if he doesn't, he loses. And if he does, he can just replay all of these small minions. And now Pheno actually has to decide, is Fan Eyes better than Vanish? Because if you Vanish these Dire Moles...
It's going to be a hot and spicy no from me, Jay.
I think Vanish is definitely the play, but it's something to consider, because if you Vanish these Dire Moles, they go back to 1/3s.
Yeah,
I think you have to Vanish.
But you also need to complete your quest.
You need to complete your quest.
You need to complete
win.
the quest at some point. And this then allows for Glacial Shard. Youthful Brewmaster play the Glacial Shard next turn. That's going to be 4 mana. So if Pheno finds a prep, he can prep out the quest. The odds of him finding a prep are not very high, which then does mean that Seiko's just going to have this turn to build the board, and then next turn to attack and continue building the board. So things are still looking rather scary for Pheno.
It is looking pretty scary for Pheno, but if Pheno can get past this next board state with, say, you know, a Fan of Knives play, or just freezing up enough, and he does get the chance to play that quest on the following turn, it could be smooth sailing from him. He's going to be able to freeze up the board a little bit, maybe clear a little bit with the Fan of Nines to get that bounce back, take a little bit less damage, then can go into Valera, then can play the quest, and maybe if he picks up a Vicious Scalehide through one of these draws, he's basically back up to full health at that point.
Yeah, that Valera stealth ability is really, really relevant in this matchup if Fino's not just dead here. And with the double Glacial Shard freezing up 2 of the minions on board, there's a shot he doesn't die. It would need to be like a Leroy Cold Blood. Some combination with Leroy. And we can see Seiko doesn't have it right now.
I think if you're Fino, you have to start with this Fan of Knives.
Yeah.
Could be trying to save the Fan of Knives for the Valera later on down the road, but I don't think that's quite worth it. Just want to go ahead and commit it now. Does pick up a prep. However, he's not going to have enough mana to complete his quest and prep out at this turn.
No, but it does mean that the turn post Valera, assuming he has to Valera next turn to survive, could be all that much more powerful with the preparation. He still really needs to find Vicious Scalehide, but with the Death Shadow and the prep to complete the quest, if he finds that Vicious Scalehide, and this is again, assuming he's not just dead, that could be game winning.
Yeah, I'm a little curious on these freeze targets. Going for both of those minions, I guess trying to optimize the chances that...
Fungalmancer Disruption.
It definitely is for the Fungalmancer, just to make sure that doesn't do as much damage.
Ooh.
So now that I'm thinking about it, I do like these freeze targets
4,
a lot.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 with Cold Blood and an active SI7 agent.
That's a lot, but it's 2 off right now. And those freezes are actually really good on Fino's part.
Very smart.
That was very smart. I first looked at it and went, you know what, why not freeze the face in case of deadly poison shenanigans? But Fungalmancer was one of the ways you lost. You lost by, I believe, a Fungalmancer Cold Blood at this stage. And making sure that the Fungalmancer can't get both attacks through basically makes it like an SI7 agent. And that was really good recognition from Fino.
Yeah, Fungal plus Fungal Cold Blood plus the 3 on board, and the weapon were exactly 13 for Seiko. So very well played by Fino, and certainly an example of why he's had so much success in DreamHack events this year. This is the 4th DreamHack, and I want to say he's gotten top 16 at 3 of them?
That's impressive.
I don't know exactly.
That's
It's been a really impressive run by him. So this is going to be that Valera the Hollow, and you know what? Giggling Inventor is a really good draw as well.
You don't even need to buff them up next turn. Just 2 Giggling Inventors is almost impossible for Odd Rope to deal with.
Fino's at 12 now. You get the armor from the Valera as well. Got to keep that dagger up because you do have 2 deck hands in hand. It's fine. He doesn't want to be attacking anything anyway.
Yeah, I would have to go through the Tar Creepers. Doesn't make much sense. See Seiko there already committed, just says, you know what? Go ahead, Baku. Get in there. You did well last game for board control. What can you do for me this game?
Can be 7 power on board.
Can double Giggling Inventor and then even Shadow Step for the next turn to be able to go Giggling Inventor, Giggling Inventor, Prep, Quest. That would be 10 mana. So I think the play this turn is to Giggling Inventor, Shadow Step one of the Giggling Inventors.
That should force through 8 attacks from Seiko. That's all of the attacks he has available to him. We can obviously see there's a Vile Spine Slayer in hand and an SI7 agent.
He can only kill off one of the minions.
Yeah,
and he can't enable the other one.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
See, I don't know about this one. This is definitely something to consider.
This
is for the quest.
Certainly going down to the wire, but Fino thinks that completing the quest this turn is enough. You get both Giggling Inventors down this way as well, and this is just
I think this is
not messing around and extending it for another turn.
Exactly. Might as well, you know, just go ahead and do this now. However, I wonder if this could have been a little bit worse for Fino. And the crazy world that it actually does enable Vile Spine because 2 minions can now trade off. Whereas before, 2 minions could not trade off, which meant that Vile Spine was not a possibility.
Seiko can trade off all the minions he wants to now. He doesn't want to do that, but he can.
How much damage can he push through? Because he can Vile Spine one of them. He can clear up one with his dagger, since he did just draw that. He can't commit the SI7.
Dire Mole and Dire Mole into 1, Tar Creeper and Baku into 1, Tar Creeper
He
and...
can push 7 face.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Baku can't connect.
with the Cold Blood drawn off the top of the deck, it meant that, you know, he could enable the Vile Spine and trade off the Argent Squire. So going with the other play, you know, wouldn't have made that much of a difference. It only would have really made a difference through being able to play the SI7 agent. So I definitely like the play that Fino went for here. But he's going to need quite a bit of help if he wants to get through this.
The big advantage for Seiko with this play, he's connecting less damage to face, but his board is stronger.
It gets the Wind Fury. That ends up being the same amount of damage, actually.
Ooh.
I think he missed the last Tar Creeper attack, though.
Vicious Scale Hide off the top. Novice is very good, too.
Novice and a Scale Hide could be some kind of help. And I'm actually curious to think whether it was better to, you know, trade off.
Ooh.
Oh.
He can do it. Deckhand plus the dagger, the Giggling can go into Baku.
He doesn't have enough mana.
He doesn't have the mana. It's one off.
But, I mean, he can just use these deckhands to clear off majority of the board. But there's the Vicious Fledgling. He can't get through.
Fledgling's just going to be lethal. Fino can't put up a taunt.
That means that
Fino, if he'd taken a little bit more time here, would have known that this is not ever going to win him the game. He should have just used the
Oh,
death.
Giggling Vendor costs 1 mana.
My
What
God.
are you thinking?
Sonya, you're insane. We're dumb. Never mind.
I completely blanked out there, but you're right. Could have done this, and that was the correct play there. I don't know why I was thinking it was 5 minutes.
God, Quest Rogue is dumb.
I mean,
Oh my goodness. Just
you
when
ready for the third patch,
Just
Cora?
when you think that they can't do it, they're like, nah, watch this. And an Oyotron is like, did you miss me? And we're like, no,
Hello.
we didn't.
Hello. Hello.
I had enough of that 2.5 years ago.
Knock, knock, Cora.
I'm not home.
You're supposed to say who's there.
Nope.
It's going to say Quest Rogue
Uh-uh.
for the third time.
Look, I'm not signing for the package. I don't want it.
The package is another Quest Rogue
It's
hit.
2 4/4 robots. I'm not interested.
Oh, gosh. And the most that Seiko can do is play his own Giggling Inventor that is just looking so measly compared to Fino's.
Yeah, these deckhands can trade over.
And this is why you bring Quest Rogue. This right here is why you bring Quest Rogue. This deck just sweeps lineups. I think the only matchup you are worried about hitting with this Quest Rogue that is virtually unwinnable is Tempo Mage. And that's only because Tempo Mage is literally designed with cards to stop the quest from ever being a thing. If Tempo Mage didn't necessarily have those cards like Explosive Runes and Counterspell, it still might be pretty fine for the Quest Rogue.
Seiko's going to be really mad
just gives
that
up.
he
I don't
didn't
blame
ban
him.
away this rogue deck. This odd rogue is really the only thing that Seiko had other than, like, if his Q block stayed up, getting Skull of the Minari on 5 into some crazy Doomguard turns. Those are the only 2 scenarios in which he beats this rogue deck. And now his best counter has fallen.
His best counter has fallen. However, I will say, though, Seiko is known for his Shutterwalk Shaman gameplay. He is a Shutterwalk god, as some would say. And if there's anybody that can win this matchup, if there's anybody that can win this matchup, it's Seiko.
It's a hard matchup.
It is a hard matchup. I do think it gets a little bit better with the addition of Mind Control Text in the list, and if he is running the Electro Storm Surge, which he is. Electro Storm Surge plus Lightning Storm can't answer one of the board states, but it's going to come down to, you know, does Fino draw that awkward hand? Does Seiko draw the amount of pressure he needs? How early does he get that Shutterwalk online? With Seiko's list of the Shutterwalk Shaman, it's going to be less likely that he gets that Shutterwalk online as early as possible because there's only 1 life drinker.
What are we working with here? He's only got the 1 life drinker. He does not have Hemet in the deck. He only has a single Acolyte of Pain. But he is playing double Pyromancer. Yeah, this deck is definitely built to beat other aggressive decks. But this Quest Rogue is not your traditional aggressive deck. Essentially, double Acolyte of Pain and Hemet are going to be most effective against other control decks, where Shutterwalk should just be able to beat them 100% of the time. So instead of taking a traditional list that is better against those decks when the deck is already good enough against those decks. Seiko has teched for decks like Odd Rogue, decks like Zoo, decks like Odd Paladin. So in theory, this Shutterwalk Shaman should be stronger against the field. Against Quest Rogue, however, because you're losing the second Acolyte of Pain, you're really going to struggle here to complete the Shutterwalk chain.
Definitely a little bit more inconsistent against matchups like this, and I like that play from Fino. You know, just getting the scale height down on the board, that way you can clean up the Mana Tide Totem. The real way Fino loses this matchup is if Seiko can just rush to his Shutterwalk combo, get it down as quickly as possible, and by clearing up the Mana Tide, you kind of, you know, prevent that from being a potential thing. See, Electric Storm Surge just to deal with a Youthful Brewmaster. Not the most efficient usage of it, but, you know, you need to put something on the board. You need to contest somehow, and this is the way to do it.
That's fine. Electra plus Storm is obviously stronger in the late game and can clear a big board of you know, post-quest minions, but then you are overloaded for 4 mana on the next turn, and the more turns that you overload and are unable to play Shutterwalk, the more turns the Rogue can just build up another board.
Fino picks up another Novice Engineer. That means he's currently, if he plays the other Novice Engineer from his hand, that'll put him to 3. The Shadow Step, that's 4. The Vanish, he has his quest done already. And getting it on Novice is one of the best minions you can do it on. It allows you to constantly fill up your hand with useful resources. And another Shadow Step, he was 1 mana off from just playing the quest this turn.
Wow.
Quest Rogue is absurd, Cora. It's absurd.
Completing the quest with the Novice Engineers means that Fino's going to have more than enough minions to keep up the pressure after the quest is completed. I mean, this is the nuts curve.
I mean, if you're Seiko, what can you evolve into? Is there some minion that maybe
he can go up to
Nerubian
8.
What is it? Nerubian Unraveler, the 6 mana 5/5 that interrupts the spells?
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's what it has to be right now. It's just something like that, but he's not even going to go for that.
Best 8 drop he could have gotten would have been, I don't know, Grom maybe. He doesn't have any way to activate it immediately though.
The quest is to be prepped out, and then it can just play minions, and then has Valera for the next couple of turns.
Yeah, I mean, this is... The best decks against Quest Rogue are the ones that throw them off of completing their game plan because they're worried about dying. Maybe the Tempo Shutterwalk Shaman can do it. This Shutterwalk Shaman just can't.
It's just too hard. I mean,
there isn't even Keleseth in the deck to, you know, potentially
no,
have
there's Wild
that
Pyromancers
sequence of turns to win this matchup. I think this is just over.
This is why you bring Quest Rogue to an LHS tournament, is because sometimes it just has the most absurd openers and can win the most unfavorable matchups because of how powerful of a deck it truly is. And you see Seiko right there is just trying to rush to his Shutterwalk, even though he has basically nothing in the pool, just has to play the minion out. And Fino, I think, is just going in
Vanish, play it all again.
Might as well. That's almost lethal at this point. Just 10 damage off.
It's so difficult to warrant bringing Tempo Mage just for Quest Rogue. And this is keeping in mind that Tempo Mage is really the only deck that reliably beats Quest Rogue. It's still difficult to warrant bringing it because Odd Warrior and Druid are so popular. That deck just gets absolutely dumpstered. It's a very polarized deck. But if you don't bring it and you don't ban Rogue because you're, again, still worried about Warrior or Druid or Warlock, then you get situations like this.
Very difficult call because typically, you know, Odd Rogue is a fairly good answer to it. Although with the addition of Giggling Adventure, it makes it a little bit harder. There's, you know, also the potential of Zulok. Zulok is a very another strong answer.
Yeah.
But if you don't have those answers and one of them fails, you get swept. And that's not an exaggeration. We're seeing it right here. I mean, maybe there's still a little bit of hope for Seiko here, but I'm not quite seeing it.
Yeah, even if Seiko hexes something,
it's still a 4/4.
Still a 4/4, so
I think the coolest part of the new interaction is when
really
you, as Alina, you get all the 4/4s from their hand.
That is nice. That does give Odd Warrior in particular an easier time in this matchup. Again, especially if the Quest Rogue doesn't have the 2 Stone Tusk Boars in the deck.
Not even MC Tech is enough to save him here.
Hearthstone.
Doesn't even get the spell damage to try and hopefully get 4s onto all of the minions.
And what actually is really unfortunate is Seiko just found the Life Drinker. If he had a Saronite Chain Gang and a couple more turns, maybe he could have still pulled this one off. But we're seeing some very polarized matchups on the stage so far today. Unfortunately, that's just what we're dealing with right now when it comes to Quest Rogue. And there's a reason that this deck has already been nerfed twice. It's because it's still so powerful in control matchups, and it even has now this much ability to stabilize against aggro with Giggling Inventor and Vicious Scalehide. You would think that a deck that's that powerful against control decks should not also have that much game against aggro, but it still does. And I think it's a very real possibility that we're going to be seeing some change to this deck. I actually saw one suggestion that I really liked. Make the quest completion a minion. Make it so you can't prep out that quest completion, because then think about how much more time it would take. It wouldn't be unreasonable. I would think the deck would still be very strong, but to not be able to prep out the Crystal Core would definitely change a lot.
Or make it a weapon. Make it a weapon with a static effect. That's another one I'd heard on the floor before.
That's great.
From, you know, players like Yo It's Flow and players like Nostum. They were telling me about that. But, I mean, that just goes to show you how powerful and how absurd that deck is. If it beats the aggro matchups, it sweeps basically about everything else. And if you don't bring that in your LHS lineup, I would almost call you crazy.
And again, this is something that is a little bit more tailored to the Last Hero Standing format. In Conquest, the Quest Rogue can only win one time. It's not as important to counter the Quest Rogue when you can just sort of, you know, admit that you're going to lose to it and attempt to counter something else. In Last Hero Standing, however, decks that have that sweet potential have historically been very, very strong. Years ago, it was Zoo Warlock, then it was Jade Druid, now it's Quest Rogue. And it's a very real reality that we're going to have to see over the course of this weekend. Are the lineups with Quest Rogue going to be very dominant, or are we going to see those aggro decks rise up and actually have enough of, I guess, a game plan against Quest Rogue to be able to beat it? Kind of interesting, kind of scary, but we're going to have to see how it plays out. That is going to be the end of the second round. However, we do still have a couple of matches playing out there in the arena. So when those finish up, we will get round number 3 underway very, very shortly.